one, I think all of the women should thank the men for funding our leagues, because most of our leagues would not exist without the men, number one. Number two, when we have the same numbers, then we should get the same pay.
Hold on. Let me find out. Pearl is trying to like redeem herself.
I play volleyball at the highest level, and it's like, when we make what the men make and get the crowds that the men draw, then we should get paid the same.
What's up, YouTube? Average Larry back again with another video, man. Y'all know I don't like to waste too much time, but first, I gotta say thank you to my new subscribers, man. Your boy was able to pass 1,000 subscribers, which is like that initial real milestone that YouTube sets on you before you're like, you're a beginner or you're actually a YouTube creator, right? So we were able to do that these last couple weeks. I've had a couple of videos go crazy by my own channel standards, right? Being a small creator. And you guys been so amazing hitting that subscribe button, being in those comments, and let me know what y'all think. Stay in the comments, man. I'm always down there. As you can tell, I'm replying to everybody. If you're roasting me, I'm gonna let you have it back. If you're giving me valuable information, I appreciate that, man. So thank you guys. Welcome back, and welcome if you're new here. Now, we don't like to waste too much time. We'll get right into this reaction. This is I'm Tired of Women Whining. It's Piers Morgan on this new show with two female guests, and they're talking about the pay differential in sports between men and women. Let's check it out.
Well, joining me in the studio is socialist and author Grace Blakeley and YouTube commentator Pearl Davis.
Socialist?
I would imagine identifying as provocateurs.
Of course.
Let's talk about this first of all. Pearl, I just find the whole personal pronoun thing honestly absurd. My personal pronouns on my Twitter biography are now hot, hotter, hottest. And frankly, if people don't call me those...
I don't think those are technically pronouns. I think those are adjectives, but I like the intent.
Then they have to be jailed. I go along with that. But I did that to highlight that when I do that and say that, people then accuse me of being ridiculous. I think the whole thing is ridiculous. Why do we need personal pronouns?
We don't need personal pronouns. I don't think it's kind to allow people to live in delusion.
Wait, are you
at the end of the day, we all know what a man and a woman is, okay? Just because you dress like a woman, talk like a woman, act like a woman, it does not make you a woman. And I am so tired of us.
Let me find out Pearl trying to use Piers Morgan as her redemption arc, because you know she got killed by Ethan or whatever his name is from the H3H3, which is hard to do because Ethan is terrible at debating, but somehow she lost to him. Let me find out Piers is bringing her back.
Allowing these people to let us live in delusion. It is delusional to think you are the opposite gender, and it is not kind.
I can't even go on... I love flying British Airways, right? My preferred airline, a wonderful airline. And there always used to be a lovely posh voice saying, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Britain." And I used to feel soothing, particularly if I came from another country back to Britain. I felt immediately at ease. My captain was there, sounding like he was, you know, from some wonderful Pathy news bulletin, and he referred to us as ladies and gentlemen. That's now been banned. They're not allowed to say ladies and gentlemen because there might be one person on the plane who says, whoa, hang on, I don't identify as a lady or a gentleman. Well, okay, fine, I don't care, but I do. So where's my right to be called a gentleman? Grace?
You know how I feel about this. I'm so bored of it all. I'm so bored of the fact that this is the one item that's constantly coming up over and over and over again. And you can completely see why, right? Conservative governments have destroyed our economy. We're in the middle of a massive climate crisis, just after the hottest week ever. I've just come over from Europe. It's extremely hot. And instead of talking about that, we spend hours and hours and hours talking about pronouns, talking about going into bathrooms, talking about, you know, all of this stuff that just doesn't matter.
Yeah, but you see, it doesn't matter. Hang on. But hang on, it doesn't matter to you.
I'm so bored.
It doesn't matter to you, but it does matter to women in sport. It does matter to women whose young daughters might be using these dressing rooms. It does matter to the victims of male rapists who see their attackers identify as women to get into women's prisons. So when you
So it does matter.
say they don't matter, They really do
Let's
matter.
have those issues aired in the appropriate, spaces.
We are.
In sports, have that discussion amongst,
Well,
sports people.
lucky-
But literally, it's about priorities, isn't it? There is
Lucky
a
for
certain
you,
number
I'm
of
a
time that
female
we have on
athlete.
these shows to discuss the issues that matter.
I play
You don't think
volleyball.
women's... Hang on, before we come to our next...
I don't think women's sport matters as much as climate change.
Does women's-
I think
does women's
having a
equality
planet
matter?
in which we can play sport
Does-
matters more than the
does
rules of
women's
sport.
equality matter
I know
to
that
you?
that makes me probably absolutely
Does women's
insane.
equality matter to you?
Well, I mean, yeah, of course, but actually,
Okay.
I mean, the whole point
Okay.
that I was going to make on this segment actually is that you cannot separate feminism from class issues. Like, if you're just going around saying, I don't know, I think the female CEO of a weapons manufacturer should be paid the same as a male CEO, and that's the hill I'm going to die on. I'm not fighting that fight with you, because ultimately, what I care about are the struggles that ordinary women face every day.
Well, let's come to the main point of the segment, which is this issue of women's rights to be paid the same as men in sport. Now, the Australian women's...
This to me is like the dumbest, I'm sorry, not the dumbest, but one of the dumbest, equality arguments, right? There's nothing equal about sports. It's literally survival of the fittest. You're really the best of the best, right? There's nothing equal about sports. If you're really good, you make it. If you're mediocre, you make it less, right? That's just how it works with sports. It has to be entertaining to the viewers. And not for nothing, in most sports, women are just less entertaining because they're not as good as men in said sports. There's nothing equal about it.
team have criticised the pay gap in the upcoming World Cup prize money. Let's take a look at what they said as a team.
736 footballers have the honour of representing their country on the world's biggest stage, this tournament.
Yet many are still denied the basic right to organise and collectively bargain.
Collective bargaining has allowed us to ensure we now get the same conditions as the Socceroos, with one exception. FIFA will still only offer women 1/4 as much prize money as men for the same achievement.
Well, okay, this is interesting, Pearl, because
See, that's disingenuous. It's not the same achievement, right? If I play a basketball game and 10 million people watch it, meaning the advertisement that reaches, or the advertisers that pay to advertise on my viewing gets shown to 10 million people, and you play a basketball game and 1 million people watch, meaning the same advertisement only got shown to 1 million people. Guess who deserves to get paid more? Me, because I brought more eyes to the people that are paying for the sport.
if you look at the revenue, for example, in 2019, FIFA generated £586 million in total revenue. The men's, for the 2019-22 cycle, 5.8 billion. Record revenue through the Men's World Cup. So the women's game has come on in leaps and bounds. The English Lionesses, fantastic win, sellout crowds, they're making a lot more
Let's
money.
go
They're
back. Was
definitely-
that 10 times?
In 2019, FIFA generated £586 million in total revenue. The men's, for the 2019-22 cycle, 5.8 billion. Record revenue
10
through the
times.
Men's World Cup. So the women's game has come on in leaps and bounds. The English Lionesses, fantastic win, sellout crowds, they're making a lot more money. They're definitely way, way further now towards where the men are commercially than they were, but they're still a way off. And when you saw at Wimbledon, for example, the men's final was watched by 3 times as many people, and yet they were both free to air on the BBC. You could watch both if you wanted to. So there was 3 times as much interest in the men's game. They played 2 sets more per match than the women do, and yet the women get equal pay. I'm not quite sure why. I don't think it's a matter of equality. It's just a matter of fairness, isn't it?
So basically, the men are paying for the women. If I get 3 times as much attention, 3 times as much ad revenue than you, and we make the same amount of money, I'm paying your salary. How the fuck is that equal?
Yeah, well, I won. I think all of the women should thank the men for funding our leagues, because most of our leagues would not exist without the men, number one. Number two, when we have the same numbers, then we should get the same pay.
Hold on. Let me find out. Pearl is trying to redeem herself.
I play volleyball at the highest level, and it's like, when we make what the men make and get the crowds that the men draw, then we should get paid the same.
Well, see, why is it actually a fight for equality, Grace? I mean, why, if women in a
Should be
particular sport, for
meritocracy.
example, turned out to generate more revenue, right, because they were more watchable, and in America, the women's football team is better than the men, and they do generate, even at school level, far more interest from girls than boys, for example. I don't see why equality should be the aim. Why shouldn't they get paid more than the men?
Well, look, I mean, there are all sorts of problems with the way that this market for labour, and it is basically a market for labour, works. Like, I personally don't think that the top football players in the world should be paid as much as they do. I think it's ridiculous, the amount.
Okay,
That's market
that's a
forces.
different
Exactly.
argument.
It's market forces.
Well, why shouldn't they
should
get
that
that?
be the way that we decide, you know,
Who
who
gets to decide,
generates
you?
what, who
Who
generates
gets to
what?
They get- they
decide,
get-
you?
Personally, I'm very much in favour of the fact that they came out there and said collective bargaining. Ultimately, like, the average worker in this country hasn't had a pay
No.
rise in over a decade.
I'm
How
so
is that going to
tired.
change?
I am
That's
so
going to
tired
change
of
when they
women
organise
whining.
with one another.
I am so
in-
tired of women whining.
Mate,
it's
the only
like
person whining at the moment is you.
Literally, the men fund our leagues, and we will still whine that we don't get paid enough. And honestly, when athletes do shit like this, it makes all of us look bad. Because instead of being thankful for the league that we have, we go out and whine and complain
I'm not the biggest fan of Pearl. I think she's definitely grifting most of the time, but she's spitting right now.
about the pay.
I mean, as I said, I'm not whining. You sound like you're maybe doing a bit of whining. But like, personally, I don't think we should be whining. I think people should be organising. If you want a pay increase, join a union, get out there and fight for it. That's my view.
Should the women footballers get the same as the men?
Yeah, I think it probably makes sense.
Even if they're not
But
making anything like the revenue?
Ultimately, like, it's
The
not going to
female
change.
footballers lost
It's not
to
going
a
to change unless they
15-year-old
organise. That's actually true across every sector
Let
of
me-
the
okay, well, let me-
economy.
how much-
If you
all right,
want a
let me-
pay rise,
okay.
join a union
Let
and
me-
fight for one.
It's a stupid argument. They have unions. It's not about whether you have representation. It's about how much money can you bring to the sport. If you don't bring in the money, you don't get paid.
Let me ask you this, though. They have got unions. But
Exactly.
let me ask you this. On talent alone, for example, as a yardstick, the US women's football team were beaten by a group of under 15 boys from Texas, right? Who were very good under 15 boys.
Crazy.
But their under 15 boys team beat them, I think, about 8-9-0 or something. So why should women
8-0.
footballers, who are clearly nowhere near as good as their male counterparts, just technically, why should they get paid anything like as much money?
Well, I mean, you know, it sucks, doesn't it, that, like, as a woman, yeah, okay, you play volleyball. I'm a surfer. I absolutely love surfing. It's very hard for women to build up a body strength. This is something that I've learned very much the hard way.
This is deflection.
And so, you know,
Surfers,
it
by the
is-
way, there is equal pay.
Yeah, there is. And actually, you know, it's one of those sports where...
Can a
in
woman
my
be as good
opinion,
as a man or not?
Well, it's different.
No.
It's a different sport, really. It's not, you know, it is the same sport, but it's very different watching a woman surf than it is watching a man surf because...
See, she's like ducking and beating around the question. You're not as good. It's okay. Right? The men have a clear physical advantage, which makes them better at said sport. It's okay.
You know, the average male body is different from the average woman, like woman's body for all these.
But is there
sorts of
any
reasons.
actual technical reason why a woman can't do with a surfboard what a man can do?
Yeah, there's loads of reasons. Like, it is about the upper body strength. It's about, like, the way that the body is built.
So should women surfers at the elite level get the same as men?
But, like, again, I
No.
think it just is different. Like, it's a different kind of game, and people watch it. I
Oh,
think
you're
for different
shaking your head.
reasons.
No, I just think when we start making the same amount of money as the men, then we should get paid the same as the men. I don't hear the men whining about OnlyFans models getting paid more than them. I don't hear the men whining
Is that
about
true?
models getting paid more than them. Kendall
Does-
Jenner is the highest paid supermodel. Where are the male
But if you
supermodels?
averaged
But
out,
whenever men dominate in an industry,
If you averaged out what? The fuck is she trying to say if you averaged out? It's very clear that women make way more money than men on OnlyFans. There's a small portion of men that make a lot of money, you know, because they have, you know, like a bunch of, I guess, gay customers, right? But women ain't out there buying porn like that. That's what men do. So yes, the average looking girl can make way more money than a very attractive man on OnlyFans.
women will just complain.
I mean, I don't know if that's true about OnlyFans, because there are a lot of men on OnlyFans as well. But I mean, look, the main point
You
here...
think they make the same?
I have no idea.
Hell
But, like,
no.
maybe
Well,
if
then
you
why are
averaged
you-
out the number of men and women that are on that website. Anyway, look, the main point here, the point that I came on here that I wanted to make
Go on.
was that like the problem that we have in our economy at the moment is not that like the average football player isn't paid the same as the average man. It is probably an injustice, and I'm glad that they're organising and working together to fight for that. But ultimately, the problem we have in our economy is that nobody's getting paid enough money because inflation's eroded people's wages. Even before that, no one had a pay rise in a really long time. And the lesson from this is, as I've said, I'm going to say it again because it's an important lesson and no one knows about them anymore because they see them as a hangover from the 1970s. Join a union because otherwise your bosses are going to
Yeah,
walk
but there
away
are
with you.
unions for all these. It's the unions that are fighting for them.
Exactly.
Right.
But okay,
They have
but
unions.
just as a general point, though, the principle you think that women should get paid the same, even if they're not as technically as good and not producing as
Well,
much
it's a
revenue.
subjective judgment, isn't it, on whether or not they're like technically as good?
Well, not
No,
really.
it's not. No, it's not.
Because people watch men and
No,
women's
it's
sports
not.
for different
Well,
reasons.
let me give an example. An example would be the Olympics. If you made it non-gender specific, how many women would win medals?
Well, I mean,
It's not subjective to say women are not as good. It's just clearly proven time and time again. You got the swimmer Leah Thomas, who was like 500th amongst the men in the world, went and dominated all the women. Venus and Serena, both great tennis players, have admitted openly they would get crushed by like the 250th ranked man in the world. Anything that requires like physical strength, agility, speed, it's not fair. Like it's not UFC, MMA, like fighting wise, it's not close. Even like things like what's it called? Racing, right? Formula One racing, right? Just your perception. It's not even close, honestly. I don't think there's one. There may be one sport like targeting, like shooting. Maybe shooting, there's like an equal playing field because it's more of a, just reaction time and vision. You don't really need to have like a strength advantage. But no, it's not even close.
okay.
I
If
mean,
you're-
maybe in equestrian and maybe in shooting, I think, are the
But
two.
again, I think-
where there's no sense that the men might win.
You can say like, oh, this group is better than this group. But again, I think it's different.
Men are
It's
better than
different.
women
We
at
watch-
sports.
Facts.
Yes, let's not live in this delusion.
And in
I played
and in most
16
cases,
years
and in
of
most cases,
professional
Grace,
sports.
more people, men and women, want to watch men play sport.
Correct.
Right.
It's just a
Can
demonstrable
you
fact.
name-
That
can
may
you
change.
name
And my point is,
five-
if it changes, I don't see why equality should be the only ambition for the women. If it turns out that in some sport women get more viewers watching and therefore draw more revenue, I'm all for them getting more money than the men.
Can you name 5 WNBA players? 5 female soccer players?
I mean, I can't name any soccer players
That's
already.
crazy. I
What
wish we
is
had the support
WNBA?
from the
basketball?
feminists.
I don't
we
know.
would get equal pay if we would just get the support from the feminists.
Well, let me tell you.
Name 5.
Let me
Name
tell you.
5 what? WNBA? I don't even know what the WNBA is.
We need our
Basketball.
support.
You're asking the wrong person.
Yeah,
I think.
you really are.
But I do want to mention one thing, which is I had Dale Vince on the program. He's been funding Just Stop Oil, and also he was very, very keen to show his feminist credentials because he owns a football team, and he had just hired the first female manager of a football team. But there was a slight
Good for
problem,
him.
which he only made her the caretaker, and I saw a potential flaw here. So let's see what went down when I interviewed him. You didn't think by appointing the first female caretaker manager of a professional men's team you would get any attention?
She's the best candidate for the job at the club. This is what happens. You look at within the club, you find your best coach, and you say, take the team in an interim period while we do a proper recruitment process. That's all that's happening here. Why do you keep coming back to that?
Because she's
If you
only
look
a
at our record
caretaker.
of appointments.
She's only a caretaker.
Look at our record of appointments.
So if you believed in her that much, you'd have
Look
made
at
her
the record
manager. You've got all
of
the
appointments.
publicity, but actually
No,
she's
no,
not
no.
got the full
That's
job.
not how it works.
And I suspect what's going to happen is you're going to
I
go
thought you
and
understood
find.
football.
You're going to probably go and find a bloke to replace her, and then you're going to have to deal with that.
I thought you understood football, Piers.
I do. I'm an
thought
Arsenal
you
fan.
did.
Well, you might be massively unsurprised to learn that 12 days later, Hannah Dinkley has been removed from her job.
Oh
Dale
my
talked a good
God.
game on feminism and women's rights and boasted about it and got all the publicity. And in the end, he got rid of her after 12 days and put a bloke in
12
charge.
days.
And you can make your own view about Mr. Vince for doing that. Lovely to see you both. Thank you both very much indeed.
Well, Pearl didn't represent herself too badly on this go around. I think she's like I said, on her redemption arc, trying to get some get back after Ethan destroyed her on their little back and forth. So good job, Pearl. We're watching. Even when we're not really watching, we're still watching. We'll find out once you step in it again. Anyway, it's been another one. Until next time, as always, my love.